This is Tea with Botha.
We are starting a new venture with what I call a Tea with Botha. And today, as our inaugural, episode, we are in conversation with a good friend of mine. In fact, that's why I must do a disclaimer that Sandile Memela is a good friend of mine, good brother of mine. And Gazi, welcome and thank you for making time.
Gazi, as you know, anything for you, everything from me. It's an honor and a privilege to be your first guest.
Well, thank you so much. And like I said to you in preparation, that this is not going to be your stoic, in the box. It's going to be a conversation. We're going to talk. And I want to, Gazi, people out there may not know, because I know that you are this kind of a camera shy person. Tell us more about who's Sandile Memela.
That's a very deep, profound question. How do you begin to define yourself outside the purpose and meaning of your life if you have rediscovered it? And how do you define yourself and tell us who you are if you don't know who you are and where you come from? Of course, I'm the son of Nomali and Bogoto, born and bred in the townships, Diepkloof, a very volatile township. Managed to go to school there and only went out of Johannesburg when I was pursuing my higher education to Botha. That was the very first time that I traveled outside Soweto and Johannesburg, going to the Eastern Cape. And of course, I had graduated from a missionary school run by Catholic nuns.
Interesting.
Who are the people who helped me to discover who I am. And I need to give credit to a very young, pretty, attractive nun called Rita Scolan, who I believe identified my talent and potential and advised me that, no, I was born to be a journalist, a writer. And she did this because for some reason, she appreciated and loved my essay, which she read to higher classes. So from that point on, I've always known that I'm just a conduit, a medium, a custodian of a truth that comes from wherever it comes. So in my writings, which is what defines me, because I am a writer, I am a journalist, I am a cultural critic, I try to be someone who relates or relays the truth, whatever that means in our confusing world.
Interesting. Makia, do you remember that essay? What was it about? That propelled you to where you are now?
Well,
small beginnings, but interesting.
I know. I mean, it was a very difficult one where one had to write about a shoe telling its own story, you know? And I think many other colleagues or classmates at the time flunked that one. And I got it right because I actually personified that shoe, which was worn by my father. And I went on to tell his story through the shoes that he used to walk the earth, country.
Do you remember how old were you?
I think I was in grade 10, right?
In today's language.
Yeah, in today's language.
So that time must have been started at 8.
Yes, yeah. JC Form 4.
Yes.
So I was 15, 16. Yeah.
Interesting.
Relatively young.
And then you moved from there. You said you went to Botha to study what?
I went to Botha to pursue journalism specifically. And it's interesting how I got there. Well, of course, my mother and father were from the poor working class. My mother, and may her soul be blessed, was just a domestic helper, a tea girl, and my father was a messenger, you know. And of course, they made it clear that they would not have money to send me to university, so I had to hustle. And I remember I was selected to be one of the students who were to attend a Rotary International sponsored youth conference.
Interesting.
Yeah, in Magaliesburg. And that's where we were addressed by a spectrum of South African leaders, you know. And one of them happened to be the member of parliament for Roodepoort, Baron du Plessis. And then I went up to him and said, I heard you say that blacks think that they've got master's degrees when they have matric. I plan to have my matric this year, but I don't have money to study further to get this master's degree. And he dared me, challenged me to write to him, to outline what my dreams were. And I wrote to him, and he introduced me to the Super Afrikaners who were running PL newspaper. And I had an appointment with Ton Vosloo, told him that I wanted to become a journalist, the first journalist who would come out of Soweto to work for the Afrikaans newspaper.
And that was you.
And that was me. And of course,
and how did that sit with you? I mean, then Afrikaners, I mean, you grew up in Soweto. All of us know that there were this, I mean, there was a resentment towards the Afrikaner. How did that, I mean, how did you navigate that?
Look, when we were sitting and talking about my plans and why I approached them, he reminded me that, but you're a young boy from Soweto, and 4 years ago, you guys were protesting against Afrikaans. It was a clear and direct allegation, right? And look, I had to save myself, and I made it clear to him that, no, sir, not all of us are opposed to Afrikaans. What we are opposed to is imposing it as a medium of instruction when we have our own languages. Look at me. I am here, and an example of some of the young people who want to promote the use of Afrikaans as an indigenous language. I've come to you to ask for a bursary to be the first journalist from Soweto to write for your paper in your own language.
In Afrikaans?
In Afrikaans. And quite complex.
Yeah, how was that received by him, Baron du Plessis?
No, it wasn't Baron du Plessis. It was Ton Vosloo.
Oh, Ton Vosloo, yes.
I think he received well and was taken aback. But at that time, let's admit, the Afrikaners had embarked on a mission to co-opt as many talented blacks as they can for them to be part of the system.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. That's an operative word, to be part of the system.
To be part of the system.
Meaning that you would not expect them to fight the system, because then you are part of that system. Could that be characterization be correct?
You know, like there are no easy answers to that question.
Okay.
And of course, you'd know through their ban-to-stand policies what they wanted to do, get blacks to support whatever vision they had, to divide and rule us. Through the imposition of Afrikaans, they wanted to seize back the power from English domination to be the Afrikaners who define who we are. By identifying young students who would be the future leaders of the country, they wanted young men and women who would help them pursue their fake dream, if I call it, you know. And of course, the system that we're referring to is a racist system based on skin color, where if you are white, you're superior. It's a supremacist system where whiteness reigns supreme. It's a patriarchal system where the white man is always boss. And of course, it's a capitalist system that is ruthless, violent, and promotes greed and selfishness. That system and its values is still intact.
As we speak now.
As we speak now.
Fast forward, you come back after Stellenbosch. In fact, let me, without letting the cat out of the bag, after Forte, and then what happens?
It's interesting that you asked that, because after I graduated at Forte, they offered me a silver platter to make my choice in terms of where I wanted to work.
Who are they?
This is now the Super Afrikaners, Naspers.
Okay, the
company. Who are today called Media 24.
Okay.
Yeah, they said...
Interesting.
Yeah, they said, congratulations, you've completed your studies. We know that our initial plan was for you to join us as the first Soweto Township journalist to work for Beard, but we're glad to announce that we've since acquired the ownership of Drum Magazine, True Love Magazine, and City Press. Should you wish to work for any of those publications, would be very happy to send you where you want to go. And then, because I grew up reading The World and Percy Koboza's column, I said, no, I would love to go and work under this legend and icon, Percy Qoboza, who was at that time, appointed the editor of City Press. And that's how I got to City Press.
And what do you think about journalism today and yesterday? I mean, you worked, in fact, a few months ago, you were one of the, you were you spoke, you were the guest of from Percy Qoboza's family, Percy Qoboza's memorial. And what are your thoughts? I mean, what they stood for, what they did as journalists then, and when you look at journalism and your definition of journalism, what is it? I mean, you're a journalist. Explain to me, explain to our viewers as we drink tea.
Yeah, Mbuyiselo, like journalism, the media. It's not a mistake that it is referred to or called the fourth estate.
Can you explain that?
Yeah. I think it's one of the pillars of the system that we referred to now. There is, of course, the legislature, where policies and laws are made. There is, of course, the judiciary that upholds and promotes the laws. And, of course, what's the third one?
You would have, you spoke of, that would be parliament, judiciary, and not the executive?
Yes, the executive,
yes,
right.
Yes.
And then, of course, the fourth one is journalism itself, the media. So this is a family where an incestuous relationship exists and they feed off each other. Much as journalism is portrayed or projected as independent and free, we have to ask, independent and free of what? From what? Because those that control the media control society's thought. And of course, the people who hold the power, including the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive, and business people, of course, do not want to lose that power. So the media's role in society, much as it is to inform, to educate, and to entertain, it is to control the mind, the thought of its consumers.
So you'd say that the concept of independence is it there? Is it true? Do you have something like you could say that? Look, indeed, the media throughout the world or in South Africa, it is indeed independent, or there's no such a concept.
For me, I think independence of the media is a myth, and I say so because those who control the media, those who own it, are the only ones who can be free in how they want it to be used. You must remember that the media in our society is profit-driven. So the people want to make money and they are in business. It's not like they are custodians of the truth. No, they use the media to make money. It's a vehicle for them to attract readers who will be exposed or made aware of certain products that exist. And then as a result, they are a market that then buys. Advertising is the lifeline of the media. So now, what does that mean? If you work in the media and you say or write things that challenge the system, that destabilizes or makes business owners who put money into the media uncomfortable, you are now walking on shaky ground. Something is likely to happen to you. And I say so because if we look at me, and this is one of my greatest achievements, that I was fired from the media for allegedly being uncontrollable and unpredictable. That experience taught me one thing, that if you don't do as the media owners say, and they gain pressure from other people that you are threatening their interests, they will likely get rid of you.
So if you're not towing the line,
you need to toe the line, which is do as you are told by the owners of the media. There are a few journalists that may be given the leeway, the freedom to write what they like, but they cannot be too many. And that is done deliberately to create the illusion that journalists are free, but it's very few of them who will be allowed to write what they like.
So you're saying that these business interests, do they encroach the newsrooms?
No doubt, no doubt. I mean, like, if we can use the story of the example of our mutual friend and colleague, Vusimona.
Yeah.
He once, at the City Press, ran a story on how one supermarket was selling
the rotten chickens.
Yes. And of course, he was free to write that. But didn't they come back to him and remind him that we're going to lose a lot of money? And sooner than later, they wrote a withdrawal or a story that actually nullified their initial findings. And so there you see that commercial business interests come first, and they always supersede pursuit of the truth.
So having have said that, could that your views be the same on that about Peter Mbedi? I mean, I don't know if they still exist or they were there, the 10 babies. I mean, look at, whilst you answer, think also deeper about, and this goes to what happens in the news, in the newsrooms. Think also about, I mean, what had happened during the July riots. Katomana, Natal. I mean, I would like you to juxtapose this with Peter Mbedi and what the example of our mutual friend Vusimona and others who, I mean, you spoke about people like Pesi Koboza, and to say that would I be right to say some differences as to how they embrace their craft and what they thought about their craft and what is happening now?
You mentioned Pesi Koboza, an icon, a legend. But as you are aware, in my delivery of his memorial lecture, I made it very clear that he was walking the tightrope. I think he was one of those few editors who were allowed to write what they like, as long as they were within the boundaries set by the system, right? Could write what he likes, all right? But then it comes to people like Peter Mbedi and the story of the 10 babies. I think those kind of stories are sensationalist, meant to distract society from discussing serious issues like economic injustice, serious issues like land dispossession, serious issues like racism, serious issues like lack of solidarity in our society.
Reconciliation.
Yes. So you write about 10 babies, and that's what people will be talking about. And it's a made-up story where you feed society fiction, right? Is to foster or create a society where we are well adjusted to the violence, the brutality, the killing of people, and we become indifferent to poverty, to inequality, to unemployment. It's a way of life,
So don't upset the economic system. Don't upset those that matters. And you alluded to this, that look, the media is there, but mainly to ensure that the status quo remain, or if the status quo is strengthened.
We are in the media, the fourth estate, an extension of the status quo, which we described as racist, supremacist, capitalist, and patriarchal. And everything should be aligned to that. And if it is not, it will be dealt with, suppressed, muted, or even marginalized. And there'll be no hesitation to take you out in whatever way that you can imagine. As you and I sit and speak now, we need to acknowledge that we are in the belly of the beast. And there is no alternative way of life. All that we know is what has been prescribed or imposed by this system that promotes greed, selfishness, and each individual being number one. And it doesn't matter how little you've benefited from this inequality and injustice, but you'd want to protect your house, no matter the size, your car, your salary, your lifestyle. And to do that, you must commit suicide, which is to give up on everything that promotes the values that perpetuate or create awareness about truth. And truth in this country is talking about racism. It's now a taboo subject. It's very rare that you read or hear of stories about racism. Lack of solidarity.
Land dispossession.
Economic monopolization. I know it's referred to as a radical economic transformation. It has been reduced to a slogan. Nobody now is in a position to break it down to actually make society understand what that exactly it's about. But it's
in practical, real terms.
Yes, but that is one of the core problems that this country faces: economic inequality and injustice.
And how do we, is there, now that you talk about it, is there a way to, in fact, reclaim or to bring back and say, in fact, this is what the media is supposed to be in an ideal world? Is it, can we do what? Is it, some people talk about the generalization of the media or the newsroom. Is there a possibility that you could bring back, I mean, sound nostalgic, to bring back those glorious days of your Pescobosa, of your Kentemba? Is that possible? Or would you say, look, this is a lost cause? We must just forget.
Gazi, we need to admit that we are all in the belly of the beast, and the demand, the prescription is that we commit suicide so that we can survive. Survival means success at the expense of the truth. As you and I speak today, the prerequisite for one to gain prominence in the media is for you to perpetuate, support, and uphold this system that we're talking about, right? And you're very selective in terms of what you write. And some of these subjects that we've just alluded to are off the table, and it's not a mistake. It's not a mistake.
This is a deliberate, purposeful, we would say,
agenda.
Yeah.
It's not a mistake that there's very little said about racism. Yes, we talk about unemployment and throw around figures of between 30 and 50%.
Unemployment.
But we do not give those figures a human face where we understand the impact of a man who has no source of income. What does that do to his self-respect, to his dignity, to his self-worth? What does he do? How does he survive? We don't understand that as a society.
And ordinarily, we'd expect the media to put a searchlight on those. I mean, to go and tell us, in fact, Pumas Betane, what are the daily experiences? What are they going through every day of our lives? And you are saying that we don't get to know about that woman, a Pumas Betane, who's there.
Yes, this Magogo who wakes up to collect 350. Let's say she's over 60. Who is she? Where does she come from? What has she done for this country? So that when we see them, we bestow upon them the greatest gift, which would be dignity, which would be respect. And that would actually motivate us to begin to care and to do something about them. The media doesn't do that.
So, in fact, the media does not report on that because, as you said earlier, this is hardcore. This would go a long way towards disturbing the status quo.
Yeah.
So it's nice to talk about your 10 babies. It's nice to talk about, what one would call this miscellaneous, is not so important, so that make sure that the capitalistic system is not disturbed.
Mboy, it's sad to say, but over the years, especially the last 20 years that I've been in government, I've come to resign myself to the fact that all that we live for now is to, as individuals, make ourselves as comfortable as we can be in this injustice, in this inequality, in this hell on earth. The only thing that one wants to achieve is, am I and my immediate family and friends okay? And this is how the system actually inculcates this indifference to human suffering and misery, which largely afflicts Black people. This is how the media actually makes us to not care, to lack compassion, empathy, and love for fellow human beings. This is how we become well adjusted to selfishness and
normalize it. The notion that this is the survival of the fittest and the elimination of the weakest.
It happens even at a family level. You may come from the same womb, the same home. One of you may break through and make it. For some reason, you'll think that you are not responsible for the plight that your brother or sister finds themselves in. I am from there.
Yeah.
Now, these things happen at a subliminal level where you, if you do not think about them, you will not be aware about their impact on your human behavior, your conduct, and your attitude to yourself. Now, if you are a human being who does that, something in you must have died.
We are going towards the elections, 29th May. Makia, do you subscribe to the notion that those that you don't agree with, don't publish them? Those that their views are contrary to what you hold dear, you hold as sacrosanct, cancel them. The cancel culture. What are your thoughts? I mean, would the media be or should it be central in what we're trying to do as a country, in building this society, in creating a different society, or we're a lost cause? You may just have to forget, because the media would agree that, look, it's going to be the master's voice.
But I think that cuts to the crux of the matter here, the very core. I personally believe that the role of the media should be to create opportunities and platforms for people to express themselves freely according to conscience and to promote diversity of views. Above all, the media should protect and defend the right of those that we do not agree with to speak. It does not do that. Just like you, I love writing. I love thinking critically. I love sharing my opinions with society, right? Now, over the years, what I've seen, and this is the reason why I was expelled from my position as the acting editor of the Sunday World in 2006, and as a front runner and contender for the job of editor-in-chief of both the Sunday World and the Sowetan. It's because it was alleged that I am stubborn, I'm uncontrollable, I write what I like. It was a big lesson for me that, okay, in South Africa, for you to rise to the highest rank, you must be malleable and you must do as you are told. And there are a number of pieces that I have written, and they have refused to publish them. I'll give an example of, for instance, when Ferial Hafaji was appointed to be the editor of the City Press. I think the owners of the publication actually recommended that I be her deputy.
Ferial.
Yeah.
By the way, she is now, associate editor at the Maverick.
No, that's good for her. She's an example of how far you can go if you serve certain interests. Now, she declined me as her assistant because she's one of those people who are very uncomfortable with the views that I express. And these are not personal views. These are views that I felt that needed to be put on the table for South Africa to be the society that it wanted to be, which is to look at things from a radical Black perspective, where Africans are reminded that this is your country and you have every right to enjoy the fruits of the minerals of this country, something that continues not to happen. And I've submitted pieces to the Daily Maverick, and they always choose what they will run. And I continue to submit pieces to various publications. Well, I must say, for instance, an institution like the Pretoria News continues and appreciates my freedom of expression, but others are very cautious and quick to put down views that they do not agree with, which is a problem because, as I alluded earlier, the role of the media is to promote, defend, and protect free expression according to conscience. We do not have to agree, but we must be ready and willing, as Voltaire put it, to defend your right to say what you want to say. The cornerstone of...
I'll protect your right of differing with me.
Yes. You disagree with me, hear me out and protect my right to say what I want to say. In that process, you protect your own rights. The cornerstone, not only of the media, but democracy, is freedom of thought and freedom of expression. If our society does not encourage that, we must know that our democracy is demon crazy. And
it's no more democracy, demon crazy.
It's demon crazy, and it's a fake.
So you think that, or would you say that our elections, we would need more voices who are who are critical, who are independent, or would you say that we're doing well as a country?
I think we still have some way to go to mature as a democracy where we support and entrench a culture of diversity of thought, diversity of views, diversity of political programs. There is no single party or individual who has got the panacea to solve this country's problems. Everybody should be allowed to go campaign where they want to without any threat. I think it's disappointing that, for instance, a party like MK would want to threaten violence should things not go in a particular way. They should feel free to run and allow the people to choose their leaders. However, when one says that, what we need to guard against is people who count the votes. It's one thing to cast the vote, but the most important people are those who count the votes. And we need to closely look at those people so that it's the will of the people that will be expressed by the election results.
And that's when the media, as a watchdog, would play a critical role. Would you agree?
I would agree. The media needs to be there and watch the developments. And unfortunately, in this country, it's very clear to put media boxes in a house, in a box where we can tell who they support. I mean, in this country today, with all its faults and flaws, people are free to criticize and condemn the ANC, but they must not be so biased that they do not report on some of the good things, if any, that it has done. That shows a bias that no, the agenda in the media continues to be anti-ANC, which may actually translate to anti-African interests.
I hear you.
The ANC leaders are not angels. They are not saints. Some of them, of course, are devils, but there are people who are still genuinely committed to making sure that this society restores the dignity, the self-respect of Black people in their own country.
Now that you say this about ANC leaders, and who do not give credence to the fact that it is this media that, in fact, told us about corruption, told us about the Guptas, told us about ministers who had hands in the cookie jar. Shouldn't you want to look back and say, you know what, the South African media is in fact doing what it's supposed to do, or it has done for this democracy 30 years into it?
We need to say this in slow motion, Mbuyiselo.
Okay.
And what I am saying is, the easiest thing to do in this country is to criticize and condemn the ANC. But we forget that the ANC is in the belly of the beast, the system that we described earlier. You see, if a man lives in darkness, he's likely to commit mistakes, he's likely to make sins, right? And if the ANC operates and functions in an unjust, unequal system that promotes greed and selfishness, its leaders and its followers are likely to wittingly or unwittingly subscribe to those values. So for me, at the risk of defending the ANC, and I'm not defending the ANC, the culprit is not the ANC. The ANC is doing exactly what the system wants it to do, to forget the majority. We shouldn't look at the ANC. We should look at the people who control the system, the people who switch off the light. And the ANC is groping in darkness. And that's where the media fails. We should look at what causes the ANC to act in the way that it does. And it's the people who control the economic power, who want to protect and preserve this system. And the media is part of that game, you know.
Is there hope for this media?
The media is part of the system. It's uncomfortable for a journalist to say and admit that. But globally, if you are an editor, if you are a columnist, if you are a journalist, and you write stories that the owners of the media feel threaten their business interests and the stature and position of their friends, they are likely to spike that story. There are thousands of stories that people have committed their lives to write, to tell, and those stories have not seen the light of the day. It's like reporting on the number of rape in the country. Fine, it's a story that needs to be told. But the other story that tends to fall on the blind spot is the story of false rape accusations. We never hear about that. And the question is why? Because for balance, we must say,
why?
okay.
May you answer that question? Why?
It's because they, in a patriarchal society where there is this growing view and perception that men are violent, it fits the narrative to say men are rapists.
Men are dogs.
Men are dogs. Yeah. But there are good men like you, for instance, who do not do the things that supposedly all men do. And what about them? Why don't we hear those stories? And that's my concern. It's not a mistake that the media doesn't tell the story of good men.
Is it because they don't sell?
Yeah. They're not sensational. They do not create cheap gossip that will grow legs and run and convince people and mislead people and make them lose faith in the society that they live in.
Well, thank you so much, Makia. Thank you so much. Well, I think on that note, you would agree with me that our discussions were not conventional. They were not comfortable in some instances, and I hope that you'll continue to join us. You'll continue to like us. You'll continue to support us, but more importantly, you will continue to ask these questions that are uncomfortable, because the minute we start being uncomfortable as a society, that's the minute we start dying as a country. And I think for our democracy to prosper, we have to have voices like Makia's voices that are unconventional, voices that will speak truth to power. Thank you for joining us. Have a lovely, lovely good evening.
This is Tea with Botha.